While the horror genre has seen a strong resurgence thanks to a new crop of filmmakers that have shunned the torture horror genre for a return to its roots, there's still no beating old school, although there are certainly some modern horror films looming that are likely to overtake some of these features in the future. For now, these 10 films remain the staples of a genre that continues to be one of the most popular among moviegoers. Come check out the 10 best horror films of all time. Psycho. In Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece Psycho, an embezzling secretary is on the run from the police. She hides out in a small motel in Arizona, run by a peculiar but unassuming young man named Norman Bates. The Bates Motel is in the shadow of a sinister-looking house on a nearby hill, where Norman lives and looks after his frail, disturbed mother. Bad things happen to bad people, and soon the secretary is stabbed to death while taking a shower. Psycho, written by Robert Bloch, is brilliantly shot, acted, and edited, resulting in a masterpiece of suspense and macabre.
When in fact it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
You have a vacancy?
Both Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were inspired by rural Wisconsin serial killer Ed Gein, who killed at least 2 people and dug up the graves of many more in the 1940s and 1950s. Psycho is much truer to the facts than Chainsaw is, though neither film really tells Gein's story. If you want that, you can rent The Ranged, a slightly fictionalized film based on his case. Alien. The famous tagline for 1979's Alien is, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And indeed, that thing is one of the biggest reasons that the sci-fi horror film remains of the scariest films ever made. Alien has largely transcended its label as a horror film to be mentioned among the greatest films of all time. But that doesn't mean it isn't really scary. When the commercial towing spaceship Nostromo is forced to investigate what appears to be an emergency beacon on an uncharted planet, the crew discover a derelict alien spaceship along with signs of life. But when a face-hugging creature attaches to the face of crew member, a creature far worse is unleashed onto the ship when it bursts from the victim's chest. Friday the 13th. Teenagers go to the one and only Camp Crystal Lake for a campout in Cabin 13, but what they don't know is that a little boy drowned there because the counselors weren't paying attention. His name was Jason Voorhees, and now he comes back for revenge on his birthday, Friday the 13th, to kill the counselors. Beware, the teenagers don't know that a machete-slaughtering maniac is out to get them. In the years that followed, the film has received much more positive retrospective reviews, and it has become a cult classic. Poltergeist. Another classic creepy horror movie is Poltergeist, which was released in 1982. You might not think that a movie where the evil is completely faceless could be so terrifying, but in reality, that only adds to the scare factor. You are sure to share in the family's fear as ordinary household objects start to turn against them. Just make sure you have company when you watch this movie. The Freeling family live in an idyllic community in California named Quest Verde. Their peaceful lives are disturbed when strange occurrences begin taking place in their home. The Poltergeist franchise is said to be cursed due to the amount of real-life deaths that occurred during the making of the films. The Silence of the Lambs. Clarice Starling, a young intelligent FBI trainee, has been sent to the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane to interview an inmate, Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, a brilliant renowned psychiatrist turned infamous psychopathic serial killer. She must match wits with Lecter, who has the darkest of all minds, and trust him to give her clues in the search for Buffalo Bill.
Give me one of these guys!
A nickname for a loose, unknown, unstoppable psychopathic serial killer. A fundamental difference between The Silence of the Lambs and its sequel, Hannibal, is that the former is frightening, involving and disturbing, while the latter is merely disturbing. It is easy enough to construct a geek show if you start with a cannibal. The Ring. Based on a Japanese movie released just 4 years earlier, The Ring captivated audiences upon its release in 2002, taking the often laughable threats of viral emails and memes to a truly terrifying conclusion. This movie involves a haunted videotape which threatens to kill anyone who does not show the tape to someone else within 7 days of watching it. Unsurprisingly, fear soon spreads, and the terror only increases as the movie goes on.
Before you die, you see the ring. See the ring.
The film is also responsible for one of the most terrifying scenes ever captured on film, when the figure of a young girl who was imprisoned in a well climbs out of the television screen. The short film that promises to bring death to all who see it was broadcast on US television before the movie's release in an effort to generate interest in the film before its official release date. The strategy worked, and millions of excited movie fans flocked to theaters to be terrified by the film. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Serial killer Freddy Krueger stalks this Midwestern neighborhood, bringing terror and even death to teenagers while they thought they were safe in their beds. No matter how tired you are after watching this horror movie, you won't want to go to bed. What could be scarier than the thought of the monster that comes for you while you sleep? The movie has become a horror classic and continues to terrify audiences regardless of its age. Freddy tops almost every list of scariest movie villains ever made and has become a symbol of terror for many people growing up during the 80s. The children of Elm Street all begin to experience the same nightmare featuring a terrifying figure with razor-sharp fingers. After one child is murdered whilst sleeping, the parents slowly begin to realize that a terrible secret from their past is coming back to haunt them through their children. Halloween. Halloween is often seen as the precursor to the entire slasher horror genre that is still going strong today. Directed by a young John Carpenter coming off his first feature film out of film school, Halloween would spawn a huge franchise based around the masked killer Michael while launching the career of actress Jamie Lee Curtis. 15 years after murdering his older sister, Michael Myers escapes from a psychiatric hospital, hell-bent on doing the same to Laurie Strode, his younger sister, who doesn't have a clue about her family's history after being adopted.
I think he'll come back.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Featuring an iconic score by Carpenter, Halloween is one of 2 or 3 horror films that is credited with spawning an entire subgenre of horror and pushing horror films to new heights. The Shining. Stephen King's imagination combined with Stanley Kubrick's filmmaking to create The Shining, the story of a writer, Jack Torrance. Torrance takes a job as a winter caretaker at a huge, remote resort, along with his waifish wife and their psychic son, who has the ability to sense the dead, a gift called The Shining. Isolated from the world for a winter and trying to finish a novel, Torrance is slowly driven insane by the hotel's resident evil spirits, who urge him to kill his family. Some of the images from this classic horror movie have become infamous throughout society, such as the image of Nicholson's deranged face poking through a hole that he's hacked in a door using an axe. You won't get these images out of your mind in a hurry, so don't expect to sleep well after watching this movie. The parts of the movie that are designed to shock the audience are not half as scary as witnessing Jack's slow descent into madness. In a series of chilling conversations with other employees at the hotel, the audience slowly begins to realize just how disturbed Jack has become. The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a classic horror movie, and for a good reason. The story of an innocent little girl possessed by an evil demon has been captivating audiences since the movie's release in 1973. You won't forget the image of the child's possessed face, or her unnatural body positions, including the famous revolving head scene. The claustrophobic nature of the setting, an ordinary family home, adds to the creepiness of the situation. It also helps that the acting is superb. Expect to be scared silly by this creepy horror flick, which has been making audiences afraid to sleep alone for more than 40 years. Even without the help of special effects, the film is thoroughly convincing and contains some truly heart-stopping moments that terrify even the toughest horror fans. The infamous spider walk scene where Regan descends the stairs in a contorted position was cut from the original movie. This was because the strings holding the actress up were clearly visible on screen. The strings were removed using computer software later on, and the scene was included in the film's release. What is your favorite movie from the list? Let us know below and do not forget to subscribe.